The ship had been drifting for 3,000 years. Captain Shiravel stood at the front of her salvage vessel and looked at the ancient craft on her screen. It was big. Bigger than anything she had ever found in her 20 years of searching dead space for valuable scrap. The metal was dark and scarred from countless impacts with space debris. Strange symbols covered the hull, letters from a language that no longer existed anywhere in the galaxy. "What is it?" asked Torek, her second in command. He was a tall Velthari, like her, with gray skin and 4 eyes that narrowed with suspicion. Shira checked her scanner again. "The computer says it is a human vessel." Torek laughed. "Humans? They have been dead for 3,000 years, probably longer. Weak little creatures. I am surprised they ever made it to space at all." Shira did not laugh. She had always been curious about the extinct species. The historical records said they were small, fragile, and short-lived. They had barely developed faster than light travel before some empire called the Draven Dominion wiped them out. A minor species. A footnote in galactic history. But this ship did not look minor. It looked like it was built for war. "We are going aboard," Shira said. "Captain, that thing is older than our entire civilization's space program. It could be contaminated. Dangerous. Then stay here if you are afraid." Torek growled but followed her to the airlock. 2 other crew members joined them. Zira, a young female who was always eager for adventure, and Ken, their engineer who could fix anything. The docking process took an hour. The ancient ship's systems were dead, so they had to cut through the outer hull. When they finally stepped inside, Shira felt a strange chill run through her body. The air was stale but breathable. Emergency lighting flickered on as their movement triggered old sensors. "Power cells still have some charge," Ken said with surprise. Impressive engineering for such a primitive species. They walked through dark corridors. The walls were lined with storage compartments and equipment Shira did not recognize. There were words painted on the walls in that dead language. She took pictures of everything. Then they found the bodies. Dozens of them. Human remains in sealed chambers, preserved by the vacuum that had claimed most of the ship. They were smaller than Velthari, with only 2 eyes and strange soft skin. They wore matching uniforms with symbols on the shoulders. "Soldiers," Torek said. "This was a military ship." Shira nodded. She felt a strange sadness looking at these ancient dead. They had died so far from their home, fighting a war they ultimately lost. Whatever they had been fighting for, it was long forgotten. "Captain," Zira called from ahead, "you need to see this." Shira followed her voice to a larger chamber. In the center stood a single pod, different from the others. It was connected to a separate power source, and lights blinked slowly on its surface. "Active lights. That is a cryo chamber," Ken said, his voice shaking. "And it is still functioning." Shira stepped closer. Through the frosted glass, she could see a face, a human face. Male, she thought, though she was not certain. He looked young, with short dark hair and strong features. He was not dead. The monitors showed life signs. Slow heartbeat, minimal brain activity, but alive. "Impossible," Torek whispered. 3,000 years in cryosleep. No species can survive that long. "The humans apparently could," Shira said. "We should leave it alone. Report this to the authorities. Let them handle it. And let some bureaucrat take credit for the greatest discovery in centuries?" Shira shook her head. "No. We wake him up. Captain, this is insane. We do not know what he is. What he might do." Shira looked at the sleeping human. He looked peaceful, harmless, just a relic from a forgotten age. What threat could one primitive creature possibly pose? "Ken, can you activate the revival sequence?" The engineer studied the controls. They were simple enough, designed to be operated even in emergency conditions. "I think so." but it will take time. The system needs to warm him gradually, or the shock could kill him. Do it." Ken worked for nearly an hour. The rest of them watched as the pod hummed to life. Frost melted from the glass. The human's vital signs grew stronger. His heartbeat increased. Brain activity spiked. Then his eyes opened. Shira had never seen human eyes before. They were brown, warm like wood from a living tree. But there was something in them that made her step back without thinking. Intelligence, awareness, and something else. Something that felt like danger. The human looked at her. Then at Tark. Then at Zira and Ken. His eyes moved fast, too fast, taking in everything about them and the room around them in seconds. Shira realized he was not just looking. He was assessing, measuring threats, calculating options. Then he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, that dangerous edge was gone, replaced by confusion and what might have been fear. He spoke. The words were strange, harsh sounds that meant nothing to them. The translation system in Shira's earpiece crackled and struggled before finally producing meaning. Where am I? What year is it? Did we win? Shira did not know how to answer that last question. She was not even sure what war he was asking about. You are safe, she said slowly. You are on my ship. My name is Shira Vel. What is your name? The human sat up slowly. His movements were careful, controlled. He looked at his hands as if making sure they still worked. Daniel, he said finally. Sergeant Daniel Marsh, Earth Defense Corps, Guardian Division. Guardian. The word sent another chill through Shira. She did not know why. Daniel, she repeated. I need to tell you something. Something difficult. He looked at her and waited. You have been asleep for a very long time. 3,000 years. And I am sorry. But your people, the humans, they are gone. You are the last one. Daniel stared at her. For a long moment, he did not move. Did not breathe. Then something broke behind those brown eyes. Something deep and painful that Shira could feel even without understanding it. But he did not cry, did not scream. He simply nodded once and said, Tell me everything. Shira realized then that she had made a terrible mistake thinking this creature was harmless. Whatever humans had been, this one was something more, and she had just woken him up. Daniel sat in the small room they had given him and tried to accept that everyone he had ever known was dead. 3,000 years. The number meant nothing and everything at the same time. His mother, his father, his little sister who had been 7 years old when he left Earth, his friends from the Corps, Commander Rivera who had ordered him into that cryopod when their ship was dying. They were all gone. Not just dead, but forgotten. Erased from history like they had never existed at all. He wanted to break something. He wanted to scream until his throat bled. But his training held him together. The Guardian program had taught him to function through any trauma, to push the pain down deep and deal with it later. So that was what he did. Captain Shira visited him every few hours. She brought him food that tasted strange, but kept him alive. She answered his questions with patience, even when the answers hurt. The historical records say your species was destroyed by the Draven Dominion, she explained. They were a powerful empire that controlled half the galaxy. The war lasted almost 50 years. I remember the Draven, Daniel said quietly. They attacked Earth when I was a child. Killed millions before we pushed them back. Shira looked surprised. You pushed them back? The records say humans never won a single major battle. Then your records are wrong. She studied him with those 4 alien eyes. Daniel could tell she was curious about him. Curious and maybe a little afraid. He did not blame her. He was afraid too. Their ship docked at a space station called Korath 7 2 days later. Daniel stepped out of the airlock and into a world that made no sense. Hundreds of aliens walked through wide corridors filled with lights and sounds and smells he could not identify. Tall ones and short ones. Some with scales, some with fur, some with skin that looked like living metal. They all stopped to stare at him. "What is that?" someone asked. "A human," another voice answered. "I thought they were extinct. Look how small it is. How did they ever survive in space?" Daniel ignored them. He had been underestimated his entire life. Every species in the galaxy had looked at humans and seen only their weaknesses. Their short lifespans. Their fragile bodies. Their slow natural healing. None of them understood what humans were truly capable of. An official named Administrator Yellen Voss met them at the security checkpoint. She was a Corellian, a species with blue skin and tall pointed ears. She looked at Daniel like he was an insect that had crawled into her office. "So this is the living fossil," she said. "Interesting. The science division will want to study him." "He's not a specimen," Captain Shearer said. "He is a person. He is a relic from a dead civilization. That makes him property of the Galactic Concord." Daniel stepped forward. "I am not anyone's property." Administrator Voss blinked at him. "It speaks. How charming. Listen, little creature, you have no rights here. Your species no longer exists. You have no government to represent you, no laws to protect you. You are lucky we do not simply dissect you for research." Daniel felt the old instincts rising. The guardian training that had been built into his bones and blood and brain. He calculated the distance between himself and the administrator. 4 steps. He could close that gap in less than a second. Could disable her before her guards even reached for their weapons. But he forced himself to stay calm. Violence would not help him here. "Not yet. I would like to see these historical records," he said. "The ones that describe my people." Administrator Voss laughed. "Why? Do you think they are wrong?" "I know they are wrong." Something in his voice made her stop laughing. She waved her hand dismissively. "Fine. Take him to the archives. Let him see how his pathetic species is remembered. Maybe it will teach him some humility." The archives were vast. Millions of records stored in crystal matrices that could hold data forever. Daniel sat at a terminal and searched for humanity. What he found made his blood burn cold. The records described humans as primitive animals, weak, stupid, barely capable of rational thought. They said humans had stumbled into space by accident and immediately started wars with their betters. They said the Draven Dominion had exterminated humanity as an act of mercy, putting down a dangerous pest before it could spread. There was no mention of human art, human music, human literature. No record of the billions of lives that had been lived, the loves and losses and triumphs and tragedies that made up human history. All of it erased, replaced with lies. "This is not true," Daniel said. Zira sat beside him. She had insisted on staying with him, fascinated by everything about him. "How do you know?" "Because I lived it." Humans were not primitive. We built wonders that made other species jealous. We created music that could make you cry and stories that could change the way you saw the universe. We loved deeply and fought fiercely and never stopped reaching for something better. Then, why would the records say otherwise? Daniel thought about that. The Draven had hated humanity with a passion that went beyond simple conquest. Humans had done something to earn that hatred. They had beaten the Draven somehow, hurt them badly enough that the Dominion wanted to erase all memory of human strength. Someone changed the records, he said. Someone wanted humanity forgotten. Who would do that? Someone who was afraid of what we were. Zira was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, what were humans really like? Daniel closed his eyes and remembered. Earth, blue skies and green forests. Cities full of life. Children laughing. Soldiers standing guard so others could sleep safely. Scientists reaching for the stars. Artists capturing beauty that would last forever. We were protectors, he said finally. That was what we chose to be. When other species faced dangers they could not handle alone, humans stood beside them. When empires threatened the innocent, humans pushed back. We were not the strongest or the fastest or the longest lived. But we never gave up. We never stopped fighting for what we believed in. Zira stared at him with wonder in her young eyes. That sounds like legends. Like myths. It was just who we were. Somewhere in the station, alarms began to sound. Daniel's instincts snapped to full alert. He heard running footsteps, shouting, the sound of weapons being armed. What is happening? Zira asked, thought Daniel was already moving toward the door. Trouble. He did not know yet that the trouble was coming for him. The Cathari Syndicate had controlled this sector for 200 years. Warlord Dravenkoth ruled it with fear and violence, and no one dared challenge him. His soldiers were brutal. His ships were fast. His reach was endless. When word reached him about a living human on Kara 7, he laughed at first. A human, he said to his lieutenant, Commander Lyra Ven. Those pathetic creatures? I thought they were all dead. They were supposed to be, Lyra replied. She was a careful woman who trusted nothing and no one. But this one has been verified. Real human DNA. And there are reports that he was some kind of soldier. A human soldier. What did they fight with? Sharp sticks? Unknown. But I recommend caution. The historical records about humans may not be complete. Draven waved away her concerns. Send a team to collect him. Dead or alive, I do not care. A human specimen would be valuable to the right buyer. If he resists, kill him and sell the body to scientists. Lyra bowed and left to give the orders. She had a bad feeling about this mission, but she had learned long ago not to argue with Dravenkoth. On Kara 7, Daniel followed the sounds of chaos. Station security was running toward the docking bays. He grabbed one of them by the arm. What is happening? The guard looked at him with terror in his eyes. Syndicate. They breached the outer doors. They are killing everyone in their path. Daniel let him go. The guard ran. Daniel moved in the opposite direction, toward the danger. He found Zira hiding behind a storage container. Captain Shira was with her, holding a small weapon that looked completely inadequate against what was coming. You need to run, Daniel told him. Get to your ship and leave. What about you? Zira asked. I am going to slow them down. You are one person. Against the Syndicate. That is suicide. Daniel smiled. It was not a happy smile. I have been dead for 3,000 years. What is one more time? He moved before they could argue. Through the corridors. Past screaming civilians. Past bodies of station guards who had already fallen. The smell of burned metal and blood filled the air. It was a smell Daniel knew well. He found the Syndicate soldiers in the main plaza. 12 of them. Large reptilian creatures with heavy armor and plasma rifles. They were shooting at anyone who moved, laughing as people ran and screamed. One of them spotted Daniel. Look at this. A little soft skin wants to play hero. The others turned. They saw only a small creature with no weapons and no armor. Easy prey. Kill it, the leader ordered. 2 soldiers raised their rifles. Daniel moved. The Guardian program had changed him at the genetic level. Reinforced bones that could survive impacts that would shatter normal skeletons. Muscles enhanced with synthetic fibers that tripled his strength. Neural implants that accelerated his reflexes to superhuman levels. And training. Years of brutal, relentless training that had turned him into something beyond human. He crossed the distance before they could fire. His hand closed around the first soldier's throat and squeezed. Cartilage cracked. The soldier dropped. Daniel took his rifle and spun, putting 3 shots into the second soldier before his body hit the ground. The others opened fire. Daniel was already moving. He ran along the wall, defying gravity with pure speed. Plasma bolts burned the air behind him. He leaped, twisted, and landed behind 2 more soldiers. Close combat now. No time to aim. He broke the first one's arm at the elbow, used him as a shield against his partner's fire, then threw them both into a support pillar hard enough to crack the metal. 8 soldiers left. They tried to regroup, tried to form a defensive line. But Daniel was too fast, too precise. Every movement was calculated. Every strike was lethal. He disarmed the 5th soldier and used his own blade against him. 6th and 7th went down together, their heads colliding with a sound like thunder. 8th tried to run. Daniel caught him in 3 steps. The last 4 fired everything they had. Daniel rolled, came up shooting. 3 went down instantly. The last one, the leader, dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Wait, we can make a deal. The warlord will pay anything. Whatever you want. Daniel walked toward him slowly. His body was barely breathing hard. The entire fight had taken less than 40 seconds. I want to know who sent you. Dravenkoth, warlord of the Kethari Syndicate. Please, do not kill me. Daniel stared at him for a long moment. Then he lowered his weapon. Go back to your master. Tell him what happened here. Tell him that humans are not extinct. And tell him that if he ever threatens innocent people again, I will find him. The soldier ran. Daniel turned and found dozens of people watching him. Station workers, civilians, security guards who had arrived too late to help. They all stared at him with the same expression on their faces. Fear, awe, and something else. Hope. Far away. On his command ship, Warlord Dravenkoth watched the security footage from Karth 7. He watched a single small creature tear through 12 of his best soldiers like they were children. He watched movements that should not be possible, speed that defied physics, strength that broke armor with bare hands. Commander Lyra stood beside him in silence. What is he? Draven asked quietly. A human. A guardian, according to the old records we found. The records said humans were weak. The records were wrong. Dravenkoth had conquered worlds. He had destroyed armies. He had never felt afraid of anything. But watching this creature, this human, he felt something cold crawl into his chest. Gather the fleet, he ordered. All of it. We are going to Karth 7 personally. To capture him? To kill him. Before anyone else sees what he can do. Before anyone remembers what humans really were. Lyra nodded and left to give the orders. Draven continued watching the footage. The human had spared the last soldier. Had sent him back with a message. That was a mistake, Draven thought. Mercy was weakness. And weakness could be exploited. But deep in his chest, that cold feeling would not go away. The footage spread across the galaxy in hours. Someone had recorded Daniel's fight with the Syndicate soldiers. They uploaded it to the Galactic network, and it spread like fire through dry grass. Billions of beings watched a single human destroy 12 armed warriors in less than a minute. They watched him move with impossible speed. They watched him show mercy when mercy was not required. Reactions varied. Some species refused to believe it was real. Surely the footage was fake. Humans were weak creatures from ancient history. This had to be propaganda or special effects. Others felt fear. If one human could do this, what could an army of them have done? What might they do again if more of them still existed somewhere? But many felt something else entirely. On worlds ruled by criminal empires and corrupt officials, oppressed populations watched the footage and whispered among themselves. They remembered old legends. Stories passed down through generations about a species that had stood against darkness. A species that had protected the weak and challenged the strong. Maybe those legends were true after all. On a small moon at the edge of known space, an ancient Morellan named Elder Korn watched the footage with tears in his eyes. He was over 800 years old, one of the longest-lived beings in the galaxy. And he remembered. He reached for his communication device and contacted Captain Shiravel. "You found him," Korn said when her face appeared on his screen. "The human. You actually found one." Shira looked exhausted. "How do you know about that?" "Everyone knows. The footage is everywhere. But I need to speak with him. I need to tell him the truth." "What truth?" Korn took a deep breath. "The truth about what happened to his people. The truth that has been hidden for 3,000 years. 2 hours later, Daniel sat in Captain Shira's ship and listened to Elder Korn's transmission. The old Morellan's voice was heavy with age and sadness. "The Draven Dominion did not defeat humanity," Korn explained. "That is the greatest lie in galactic history. Humanity defeated the Draven. Your species destroyed an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. "If we won, why are we extinct?" "Because winning cost you everything. The Draven were going to use a weapon. A terrible device that would have sterilized every world they could not conquer. Billions of innocent lives would have been lost. Entire species would have been erased." Korn paused. His ancient face was filled with pain. "Humanity stopped them. Your fleet sacrificed themselves to destroy the weapon and the Draven homeworld with it. Earth led the final assault. They knew they would not survive, but they went anyway. They died so that the rest of us could live." Daniel could not speak. He had known the war was terrible. He had known many humans died. But this truth was bigger than anything he had imagined. "Why was this hidden?" Shira asked. "Surviving Draven loyalists corrupted the records. They could not accept that they had been beaten by humans. They spent centuries rewriting history, making humanity seem weak and pathetic. They wanted your species forgotten, your sacrifice erased. And the galaxy just accepted that?" Daniel asked, his voice rough with emotion. 3,000 years is a long time. Memories fade. Records change. Eventually, the lie became the only truth anyone knew. Until now. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth still existed. A dead world orbiting a yellow sun. The grave of everyone he had ever loved. They had died as heroes. They had saved the galaxy. And the galaxy had forgotten them. "The Syndicate is coming," Shira said quietly. "Dravenkov himself. He's bringing his entire fleet to destroy the station." "How long?" Daniel asked. "Hours. Maybe less." Daniel turned from the window. The grief was still there, heavy in his chest. But something else was there too. Purpose. "Then we need to get ready." The next few hours were chaos. Daniel took command of the station's defenses with a calm authority that surprised everyone. He organized the security forces into teams. He identified choke points and fallback positions. He taught frightened civilians how to barricade doors and where to hide. Station Administrator Voss watched all of this with growing confusion. "Why are you helping us?" she demanded. "We treated you like property, like a specimen." Daniel did not stop working. "Because innocent people are going to die if I do not. That is reason enough. But why do you care? We are not your species. We are not your responsibility." Daniel finally looked at her. That is what being human meant. We made everyone our responsibility. We protected those who could not protect themselves. That is who we were. He returned to his work. Voss stood there for a long moment, then quietly began helping coordinate the evacuation of non-combatants. When the Syndicate fleet arrived, Daniel was ready. There were 30 ships. Enough firepower to reduce the station to dust. But they did not bombard from space. Dravenkoth wanted to make this personal. He wanted to kill the human himself. Syndicate soldiers poured into the station through multiple breach points. Hundreds of them. They expected easy prey. They expected terrified civilians and weak security guards. They found Daniel Marsh, waiting for them. He had accessed his neural implant fully for the first time since awakening. His mind connected to the station systems. Security doors slammed shut where he wanted them shut. Defensive turrets activated and targeted enemies with perfect precision. Life support vented atmosphere from sections filled with syndicate troops, and where the machines could not reach, Daniel fought with his own hands. The station's defenders rallied around him. They watched him take wounds that would kill anyone else and keep fighting. They watched him refuse to retreat, refuse to surrender, refuse to let a single innocent person die if he could prevent it. They learned what humans were. When the assault finally broke, the Syndicate had lost over half their ground forces. Dravenkoth retreated to his flagship with rage burning in his heart. Daniel stood in the ruined main plaza, surrounded by defenders who looked at him with new eyes. "This is not over," he told them. "He will come back. But so will I, and next time, the galaxy will remember what it means to have humans standing beside them." Elder Corrin's transmission crackled through every speaker on the station. "The truth is spreading. The real history of humanity. The galaxy is starting to remember." Daniel looked up at the stars beyond the damaged hull. "Good," he said. "It is time they knew what we died for." The Galactic Concord assembled 3 weeks after the Battle of Chorus 7. Representatives from over 100 species gathered in the Great Hall of the capital world. They came from every corner of known space, summoned by High Arbiter Sorelman to witness something unprecedented. A living human would address them. The last of a species they had been taught to dismiss as primitive and irrelevant. Daniel stood outside the chamber doors and tried to calm his breathing. He was not nervous about speaking. The Guardian program had trained him for every situation, including diplomacy. But this felt different. This felt like the most important moment of his life. Captain Shira stood beside him. "Are you ready?" "No, but I do not think I ever will be." "What are you going to say?" Daniel thought about that for a long moment. He had prepared a speech, written it and rewritten it a dozen times. But standing here, about to face the representatives of every species in the galaxy, the prepared words felt hollow. "The truth," he said finally. "That is all I have." The doors opened. Daniel walked into the chamber. 1,000 eyes watched him cross the floor. He heard whispers in languages he did not understand. He saw expressions ranging from hostility to fear to something that might have been hope. He climbed the steps to the central platform and stood before them all. High Arbiter Sorelman sat in the highest seat. She was old even by her species standards, with silver skin and eyes that had seen centuries of history. She studied Daniel with careful intensity. "You are Daniel Marsh," she said, "last survivor of the human species. You have requested the right to address this assembly. That right is granted. Speak." Daniel looked out at the gathered representatives. So many species, so many worlds, so many lives. 3,000 years ago, he began, my people died. Not in defeat, as your records claim, but in victory. Humanity destroyed the Draven Dominion to save the galaxy from a weapon that would have killed billions. We gave everything we had. Our ships, our soldiers, our world, our future. And when it was over, we were gone. The chamber was silent. Not even whispers now. The survivors of the Draven could not accept that they had lost to us. So they spent centuries erasing our sacrifice. They rewrote history. They made us seem weak and foolish. They wanted the galaxy to forget what humans were capable of. Daniel paused. He thought of Earth, of his family, of everyone who had died 3,000 years ago, believing they were making the right choice. I am not here to demand gratitude. The humans who died are beyond caring about recognition. I am not here to seek revenge. The Draven are gone, and punishing their descendants would dishonor everything my people believed in. He took a breath. I am here to remind you of something. Strength is not about weapons or armies or technology. It is about what you choose to do when others are in danger. My people chose to be protectors. We chose to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. That choice cost us everything, but we made it anyway. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others leaned forward with interest. The Kethari Syndicate attacked Korra 7 because they were afraid. Afraid that if people saw what one human could do, they might start asking questions. They might start wondering if the galaxy would be different with humans in it. Daniel's voice hardened. Dravenkoth and those like him rule through fear. They tell you that no one can stand against them. They tell you that resistance is hopeless. But I am standing here, alive, because that is a lie. One person with courage can make a difference. One person who refuses to surrender can inspire others to do the same. He looked directly at High Arbiter Sirel Mon. I am not asking the Concord to fight my battles. I am not asking for an army or a fleet or special powers. I am asking you to let me do what humans have always done. Protect. Stand with the weak against the strong. Challenge those who prey on the helpless. And what do you want in return? Sorel asked. Nothing. That is the point. We never did it for rewards or power or recognition. We did it because it was right. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives argued among themselves. Some demanded that Daniel be detained for further study. Others called for the Concord to publicly restore humanity's true history. A few brave voices suggested alliance. Through it all, Daniel stood quietly and waited. Finally, Sorel Man raised her hand for silence. The records have been examined by our historians. Elder Corrin of the Morellans has provided uncorrupted data that confirms what this human has told us. Humanity did sacrifice themselves to save the galaxy. That truth will be restored to all historical databases. She looked at Daniel with something that might have been respect. As for you, Daniel Marsh, the Concord cannot grant you official status. You represent no government, no recognized species. But we will not hinder you. If you choose to wander the galaxy acting as some kind of guardian, that is your right as a free being. Daniel bowed his head slightly. That is all I ask. Later, outside the Great Hall, Captain Shira found him standing alone. What now? She asked. Now I do what humans always did. Find people who need help and help them. That sounds lonely. Daniel smiled. It was small and sad, but it was real. Humans were never meant to stand alone. We worked best when we stood together with others. Shira was quiet for a moment. Then she straightened her shoulders. My ship is not much. My crew is small. But if you need a place to start, you have one with us. Why would you do that? Because you showed us something at Korra 7. You showed us that one person can make a difference. That we do not have to accept the way things are. She met his eyes. Humanity might be gone, but what humanity stood for does not have to die. Let us help you carry it forward. Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. The grief was still there. Would always be there. But now there was something else alongside it. Connection. Purpose. The beginning of something new. Thank you, he said, quietly far away. Warlord Dravenkoth watched the broadcast from the Galactic Concord. He watched the humans speak of courage and protection and sacrifice. He watched representatives who had feared him For decades, look at this small creature with hope in their eyes. The foundation of his empire was cracking. The fear he had built it on was fading. "This is not over," he growled. Commander Lyra nodded. "No, it is only beginning." And across the galaxy, on 100 worlds, beings of every species watched the footage of Daniel. Martian remembered something they had forgotten. Humanity was not extinct after all. Hope had returned.